So these are all aspects that the players and the teams wouldn't necessarily have chosen, but everyone played their part within this structure that enforced this onto players and therefore made this, I would say, beautiful and yet terrible machine, churning out world-class talents. But on the other side, the byproduct is tearing up and spitting out players who no longer fit the mold, no longer can make it at the top. Then you got to consider, because of this team house approach, non-stop competition, you use up all the top talent. You get them, you have their prime, they burn so brightly, and yet much like the replicants in Blade Runner, talent is used up all of a sudden and they're gone before they should have been, and then they are discarded. So it's actually reminiscent of the porn industry to some degree, because you get it while it's hot. You get the guy while he's got a big name and while he's just on the market, it hasn't been too used up. I probably shouldn't have said guy there, because many of the girls we tend to get chewed up in that industry. And then when your name starts to fall, the star starts to fall, and you're not as big anymore, or you don't look as good as you used to, you're a bit worn out. Yeah, you start to go on the downside. Eventually, you can't perform, you're out the door. We've always got someone else coming in. Now, European Counter-Strike Global Offensive is, again, the counterpoint I want to give here, because it had a completely divergent evolution, because we had no Koreans in the same sense as games like StarCraft and League of Legends did, where obviously the Koreans in those games were overwhelmingly, as a general trend, better than the Westerners, having better results than the Westerners, and seemingly much further ahead on concepts like how to practice to the highest level, how to get the maximum amount, how to be as effective as possible your practice, even if not necessarily as efficient. And obviously then they had the Korean cultural background of dedication and duty and diligence that isn't quite present in a lot of Western countries, quite frankly. So in Europe, though, we had this scene where, to this day, the top teams, even the top 2 or 3 best teams in the world, they go to tournaments, they play in the biggest tournaments, but then between tournaments, almost all the top teams go home and they live with their family still, or they live in an area where their friends still come from. They live in their home city still, which allows them to have fun, have familiarity with their circumstances, to feel at home, to have a great atmosphere when they're not at the events, when they're not competing for their job and they're just practicing and playing online matches. They get to travel, they get to go to all these big events, they get to still go to be a top professional, but they have rest as well, and it's built into their schedule, and there's a natural time period where they can kind of decompress from the hectic and pressure-filled world of competition. I actually think that these events act like, these times at home from events rather, act as a kind of pressure valve. Not just because you have the time off, but you also have your family around you. You have your natural support network, whereas within a lot of teams, yeah, they're starting to get sports psychologists and they have team managers who hopefully play this role, and hopefully teammates to some degree can help you deal with some of the stress, even though they are your colleagues and essentially you're working on a group project, and it's hard to have too much sympathy for a guy who's breaking down and doing so is fucking you up and costing you your project mark, your success in the game, as it were. Not really an ideal candidate to be your support network. You probably should have a separate support network aside from a healthy team environment. Then you've also got in CSGO this tournament circuit, which is very differently set up. So even if you're the best team in the world, you might not qualify for all of the LAN tournaments. So you're already going to skip some of them. You're already going to have some time off. Then you can actually choose to skip certain tournaments as well. League of Legends doesn't have that. You have these set of 2 splits every year. Each of them, at the moment, currently lasts about 2 months long, just for the regular portion of the split, and then you have a couple of weeks for the playoffs. So we're talking about 2.5 months each split. You have to just be constantly playing official matches, practicing for official matches, reviewing official matches, getting ready for the end of the split, new playoffs. Everything's just this pressure of that period of time non-stop. There's not really much break there to be had. This is too much for most people to handle. And I mean, not just most as in, a majority. The vast majority of people cannot handle this. Even some players who you're thinking of now, I know players who've been in 6 LCS finals and they've been in 9 LCS seasons. Well, they can't be in 9 LCS seasons. Well, 7 LCS seasons. Those guys didn't necessarily always play at their peak all the time. Some of those guys, I know some of them personally, were cracking up during certain points of time where there was a lot of stress. Or even, what's mad is I know people like the Fnatic guys from Season 3, Season 4, who were having almost the most success domestically you can have, and that is what was killing them. Them and SK Telecom, you're playing at every tournament. You're playing every week of LCS, and then all the playoff weeks. You're going to every tournament between the LCS splits. You're going to an All-Stars tournament. You're during what should be the off-season, your downtime, and you're never getting a break. So So you're succeeding and you're getting torn up this way. The guy who's failing at the bottom of the LCS, he's having to practice as hard as possible, try and fight for his job. If he goes down, he has to play in the challenger scene, perhaps loads and then stream loads and then swim loads and try and do everything he can to get back into the scene. There's not really anyone's getting a break within this kind of a 2.5 month split approach that we're having here. And this is too much for the vast majority of people in esports and in the world in general to handle. I know you see these Korean stars, you think of Faker in League of Legends, just remains a world-class godlike player seemingly every season. You think of Flash in StarCraft, who could go years and years as just an elite pro, grinding out practice machine, playing 14 hours a day, sleeping 4 or 5 hours, still played at his peak, still innovating the game, still mastering the game. You think of someone like Sue in StarCraft 2, who was in something like 6 GSL finals, just a machine, again, time and time again, didn't win any of them, consistently come back, wasn't broken by the fact he didn't win, would get back to peak form, get back to a final, be in with another chance, years separated from past attempts at times, consistently through new metas. I mean, you could even look at my own career. I'm someone who creates a massive amount of content, has been doing it for more than a decade and a half. We are extremely rare people. In a weird way, I actually think we have an unfair advantage. It reminds me of a comment Kobe Bryant said, where he gave an analogy that when he would go into the gym and he would practice for 2 or 3 hours, he would practice early in the morning before even his team practice and before other star players get to the gym and shoot their shots before the game, and he wants to have a full sweat on and have shot all of his shots before the official game even begins. When people would think of that, they would play it up and be like, wow, I respect that so much, like, you've got to grind like that to be the best. And he gave this analogy. He said, for other people, yeah, they're going to look at that and, oh, it's terrible. So he gave the analogy that it's like eating your greens, your vegetables. So we all know your mum tells you, come on, eat your greens, you've got to do that to be healthy and to be at peak health and to not have anything go wrong with you and to be strong and to be at your physical peak, basically. But for most people, they don't like the taste of vegetables, so they have to force themselves to do it. They have to find a way to trick themselves to do it. But for Kobe Bryant, he genuinely enjoyed that. He had, first of all, he'd gotten his mind around the trick of making it so that long-term gratification of winning championships and being the best possible player, of knowing he did everything he could, was what really drove him in his life. Not short-term satisfaction of having a beer now or having a day off or having some fun at the moment or winning a game and then thinking, right, well, I'm on top so I can go easier. Now, beyond that though, even his mental tricks, he was also clearly, if you look into his life story, an incredibly driven person, even from when he's very, very young. Likewise myself. I am someone where, even when I wasn't working in esports, I used to watch all the demos I could get my hands on in Quake. I used to search for every little detail online about Quake players, about the top tournaments. So when I then transitioned my hobby into being my profession, I didn't mind then doubling my work hours, because I basically was doing my work hours, let's say, 6 to 8 hours a day, and then I was throwing in my 3 to 4 hours extra on the work hours of watching games and studying games, because that's basically like my work and my hobby were the same thing, therefore my work hours become longer because it's my hobby and my work combined. That's not going to be the way it is for most people. Even people who started out loving League of Legends, even people who are very good at League of Legends, they're not going to be able to sustain 5 years where they love playing the game genuinely so much that it doesn't matter that it's their job and their hobby, and they're going to have to dedicate basically their whole life to it, and that in this kind of a setup, they're going to get very little kind of choice in the matter or respite unless they just want to get kicked out of the industry and destroyed. There's very few people. I know there's the guys like Froggen, etc., who seemingly can just withstand that. For every Froggen, there are hundreds, thousands of players who cannot withstand that and who that will break. And I would suggest even the likes of the Froggens, Bjergsons, it gets to them sooner or later and they need certain breaks or they need a special support network around them. Otherwise they start to crack up too, quite frankly, and then the scrutiny of the public added on just becomes way too much. So think about this. When I talk about those great Korean players, those aren't people that were built by this system. That were people where they just adapted to the system. They're almost just mutants that somehow survived through it and got through the other side. And then you just look at the success story and you go, oh, see, it's fine, they can handle it. And you don't look at the wake of bodies behind them who just didn't and who had as much talent, sometimes more talent, sometimes themselves were considered very driven or productive people who didn't make it through because eventually the machine ground them down. They didn't get to that. That's why I often describe Korean Voodoo. I've often said to people, I love the result of it, the amazing matches, the great stories, the highest level of competition I can imagine. But in some senses, I consider Korean Blue War to be kind of a beautiful atrocity or an extreme sport. I mean, you look at some of the extreme sports out there, mixed martial arts, the NFL. These are sports which if we were sitting down now, we were trying to construct a really great competitive discipline, we would never create these sports. In fact, anyone who suggested these sports and all that they entail to a committee of us, we would say, that's incredibly irresponsible. What sports where you get your brain essentially reset and shorted and you get knocked the fuck out, you're hitting your brain stem, and then you lose time, and then you potentially have brain damage from it, or you have physical injuries that are quite extreme and can mean that a doctor literally has to ban you from playing for weeks or months, and sometimes say retire entirely. You need this for your health, because as we found out, it seems brain health actually can affect how long you live and your quality of life, etc. So these sports, I know, I love them. I love both sports. I like to watch them both, especially MMA. But there's something about them where, okay, the people who are really driven to do that, I'm not going to tell them don't do it or ban them from doing it. But I wouldn't suggest everyone does this, and I would definitely suggest tweaks and elements of the sport so that people can have longer careers and they don't suffer as much. Contrast League of Legends in this split approach with some other esports games. So in CSGO, a tournament takes between 3 days and let's say a week. That's about roughly what a big international tournament takes. Now the major, which there are only 2 of per year, currently now takes 3 weeks. But first of all, you add in 8 teams for each of those 3 weeks, and you subtract 8 teams for each of those 3 weeks. So as a result, no teams of the like 24 teams or whatever in there, most of them aren't playing all 3 weeks. Like you have the qualifiers, and then the people who qualified by making it to group stage the last one, and then the Legends teams are in the final week waiting for everyone else. So not everyone's getting that burnout at that point in time. Very few teams are going to all 3 weeks. Dota 2 has tournaments every month or so. Again, even if you get to like an international, okay, not every team's making it towards the end. So no one's playing those 3 or 4 weeks entirely. It's just, again, not comparable to a split. Overwatch League is the most comparable because it has these stages, 4 of them. Each stage is like 5 weeks long. Okay, that's comparable, but even then, with 5 weeks, and after 5 weeks you're done with that stage, you can have a week or you can have a week and a half off. And in theory, you have some break, you have some time to reset, maybe go home for a little period of time, and you have all those subs as well. Even then, with Overwatch League, I already started to see some issues with people starting to crack up a little bit and look a bit overworked and burned out, who'd really been on ham in the first 4 weeks, and then it started to wear on them as those weeks closed up towards the end, especially the teams that had the very small rosters of the 5 to 6 of the 6 to 7 players rather, so not many opportunities to sub people out, which is more comparable to League of Legends because Overwatch League actually used more subs for more games because they have all the different game modes and maps than any other esports game, including League of Legends. Then look at StarCraft 2, because obviously that's the modern embodiment of StarCraft, right? Even in StarCraft, we don't have anything as extreme now, especially now that Pro League died in Korea. You have these 3 to 4 day international tournaments, or you have the GSL, which can last a month, but every stage you're eliminating seemingly half the field, and therefore most players are getting time off again, which if they choose to then dedicate to practicing and playing more competitions, that's their choice, but they're in no sense mandated to or required to by the competition itself. Also, when you don't have these long splits like this, you can allow people to practice, but practice with purpose. Have something in mind, not just have to practice because there's a game coming up. Have to practice because you did well in the last game, you want to maintain your level. Have to practice because you did badly in the last game and need to get your level up to another aspect. It's up to you how you practice. It's not going to be essentially forced by this atmosphere. Now, what's the issue, you might say here, with having these long splits, or even with people burning out? Well, you're going to have what would be your Hall of Fame careers be shorter, and some of them not be Hall of Fame careers because someone breaks up after a year who otherwise could have played for 10 years. You're going to put people under a different kind of pressure than otherwise exists. Like, you know, when you have the pressure of a massive playoff match, you've never played in the playoffs, or you've always lost in the semi-finals. I love that. I love seeing people tested that way to see will they become someone who under pressure becomes a diamond, or will they break entirely. I love the kind of pressure of, you got to compete for this spot, and if a young hungry guy's coming up, he can take your spot even if you're a legend. I love all of that. But what I don't love is the pressure of, can you simply endure physical and mental tolerance to a degree which we can actually almost objectively prove the vast majority you can't. This is like one of those scenarios where it's like, look around you, there are 100 people in this room, 2 of you will succeed and be here in 5 years. That's not cool. Because again, it's not about skill or your aptitude or whatever. It's about some aspects that maybe psychologically you don't even have a choice about. Maybe you can't even adapt to these. Maybe at the moment we don't have the support structures and the tools to actually allow even people with all the talent and the will and the drive in the world to succeed in some of these senses. Maybe even the really great players who naturally can fit some of this are going to break up for emotional reasons, psychological reasons, RSI, physical reasons. Again, we're not making it the game that's determining how long your career can be. So I don't blame Riot necessarily for this. There are a lot of these components that have taken many years to look at and try and figure out the principles behind, or what the negative effects were, even if we knew there was a negative effect. It's not as simple as the idea Riot knew this or whatever, but I do think they have to look towards fixing it in the future. So what are some of the solutions? Because for a start off, in terms of Riot, since they control their whole game and they actually set up their whole circuit, especially in the West, and obviously now they've taken over all the other regions, some obvious ways you could start to fix it is, let's have shorter splits. How about a split that's 5 or 6 weeks long and then has 2 or 3 weeks between it? How about more games per week in each split? And therefore, yes, you have to, it's going to some degree reduce the quality of the games, but it's going to give more time off in the year, and you can get the same amount of games played, but in a shorter amount of time. I agree you're going to take a hit in terms of the quality of the matches, but the quality of people's lives and careers, I think, is going to be enhanced and lengthened, and therefore, I would take that trade any day, quite frankly. And then let the people who are driven be the ones who go to the ends of the earth with their practice. I would actually say break up competition more. Make formats where people get eliminated earlier, and therefore it's up to them if they have time off at that point in time. It's up to them if they get eliminated and they're a good player, if they choose to dedicate themselves, or if they want to have time off. Give them the choice to ruin their own life or have to play the way they want to play. Let people choose if they want to be Kobe Bryant or Nick Diaz, these people who just put in endless amounts of time, whether they're competing or not, or whether there's a match the next day or not. Now, what are some solutions beyond that? So, okay, one solution that we've already seen starting to get addressed is the team house issue. We've seen people like Team Liquid got apartments for people and then had an office to get to. You didn't have to live around people, and that provided some of the pressure valve, that provided an opportunity to be away from the harshness of the environment. Didn't necessarily get rid of some of the other issues. You can't be at home as much. Problem is, it's going to be hard to break all teams away from the team house method anyway, because first of all, having a team house makes it a lot easier to coordinate content creation. And we know most teams are essentially glorified agents who get sponsors. They sell the sponsors on a certain amount of hours and exposure level that their players can help them provide, and therefore they need you to hit those content hours. What's the easiest way to manage professional players like this for interviews, for exposure, for content creation? Is to have them all under one roof, and you just go into a next room and you tell that guy to do it. You don't have to wait for him to reply to your email or your phone or your SMS or your WhatsApp message, whatever it might be. Now, that is admittedly an age issue. As esports ages get bigger, get older rather, which by the way would help if your career didn't get burned out in the same way, you're going to see people who are proper professionals who are 25 and understand this is a business and do the things asked of them, and therefore command that high salary that they'll have at that point in time. It's also a factor that it's cheaper to rent a team house and then have all the players there than have separate apartments and an office space and transport between them. That's going to cost more potentially. In terms of the circuit, I already think, right, so the Overwatch League, in terms of being a league that has like a set amount of time and everyone has to play from one location, like that's already got something close to what I would like, in as much as in the Overwatch League, it lasts like roughly 6 months or something, but then you have 6 months that's just open in the schedule. And at that point, other people can host third-party tournaments, people can just have time off if they want, or they can just keep the engine ticking over with basic practice and then come back, or have boot camps to keep their level up, but they have an opportunity for there to be some breathing room, to have a real off-season. In the League of Legends, we don't really have a proper off-season for my money. Now, that isn't a perfect fix in itself. As I've addressed before, there's 4-stage system, which I think overall would still add up to like 20 weeks of the year. Still kind of insane in its own right, but in the same way, it's 20 weeks, but not spread out as much as leagues. So, again, I think that's a solution, but not necessarily a perfect solution. So I hope that whatever the approach is, at least the end goal is, let's find out ways to make these players not burn out as much, not crack up as much, not get destroyed by the system, which we would hope them putting their efforts into, make them great players, make them legends, make them Hall of Famers, make them journeymen who can go from team to team, passing on experience and helping craft something using their experience and understanding of team dynamics and synergy. Let's not have our great players chewed up by this beautiful machine and spit out the other side saying, oh, I just couldn't handle it anymore, I wish I could have played for longer, I wish I could be one of those guys from CSGO who's played for 10 years. Let's change the system.
Welcome to Thornton. Unfortunately, I don't have any content. Man, I ain't gonna stop you now.
Worry not.
I assume you saw a pretty fucking good video. And you're already on the man's channel, so stay a little while longer. I see you're comfortable, and just
we do what
check
we
a few more
must.
out.
This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Michael Allaire, Andreas Westerland, Alex Adams, G-Man, Twitch, Jerky's Minion, Anthony, T-Greb, Jake Petrucci, Jordan Senkov, Daniel Jordanov. Want to get exclusive teasers for my upcoming work? Submit questions for me or make suggestions for my content? Become a part of the ever-growing Scrolluminati via Patreon, link in the description box below.
Find your center. Master yourself, master the enemy. Waste. Find your center.
Your team has destroyed a turret. An ally has been slain.
Master yourself.
Has been slain. You have slain an enemy.
I will atone. Quiet steps. Waste not a minute.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
We do what we must.
An ally has been slain.
Extend your senses. I will atone.
An enemy has been slain. Shut down.
Master yourself, master the enemy.
Ally has been slain. Your team has destroyed.
Quiet steps. We do what we must.
Become one with the jungle.
Where?
Your turret has been destroyed.
Waste not a minute.
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain.
I will atone. We do what we must. Find your center. Extend your senses. Master yourself, master the enemy. Quiet steps.
An ally has been slain.
Waste not a minute. I will atone. Quiet steps. Master yourself, master the enemy.
An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Waste not a minute.
Rampage.
Extend your senses. Act free of doubt. We do what we must.
An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain.
Where am I needed? We do what we must. Master the enemy.
Become one with the jungle.
Extend your senses.
An enemy has been slain. Your team has destroyed a turret.
Quiet steps. Waste not a minute.
Your turret has been destroyed.
We do what we must. Extend your senses.
Another mushroom, another victim.
I will atone.
Sir,
Waste not a minute. Quiet steps. Master yourself. Master the enemy.
You have slain an enemy. An enemy has been slain.
Find your center. Their heartbeats. Where am I needed?
Has destroyed a turret. Enemy double kill.
We do what we must. Master yourself. Master. Waste not a minute. yourself, master the enemy. I'll see this through. Find your center. Quiet steps. I will Tom.
Your team has destroyed a turret. Ally has been slain. Double kill.
primitive.
Nothing can hold me back.
Vengeance is at hand. Welcome to Summoner's Rift. "30 seconds until minions spawn.
You must follow.
Minions have spawned.
Let 'em come by land, by sea or air. Send 'em running home when the vandal gunners flare.
Mess with the bull and you get the horns. You can't milk those.
Ta-da! Think you can outshoot me?
Nothing can hold me back.
Vandal gunners march sea. Surge us smoke and victory.
Stampede. Nothing can
You make
hold
it
me
easy to get impressed. One stump high and 10 stump low. Vandal gunners show 'em all.
away.
Vandal gunners what you see. Surge us smoke and victory.
Now I'm angry. Stampede. Nothing can hold me back.
First blood. ally has been slain.
You must follow. Now I'm angry. Nothing can hold me back. I know the way.
Has been slain.
I know the way. Nothing can hold me back. Stampede!
Now we're cooking.
Has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Now I'm angry.
Enemy killing spree.
I know the way. Nothing can hold me back. Now I'm angry.
An enemy has been slain.
You must follow. I know the way.
An ally has been slain. Killing spree. Double kill.
Stampede!
Enemy killing spree.
You must follow.
Your turret has been destroyed.
I know the way. Nothing can hold me back. Nothing can hold me back.
Your team has destroyed a turret. An ally has been slain. Enemy rampage.
Stampede! I know the way. I'm angry.
Your team has destroyed a turret. An ally has been slain. Shut down.
Now I'm angry. I know the way.
An ally has been slain.
Must follow.
An enemy has been slain.
I know the way. Stampede!
An ally has been slain.
I know the
Shut
way.
down.
Stampede! Must follow.
An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
must follow.
Shut down.
Nothing can hold me back.
An enemy has been slain.
Nothing can hold me back. Stampede. Now I'm angry. You must follow.
Your team has destroyed a turret. Double kill. Enemy double kill. Your team has destroyed a turret.
Nothing can hold me back. Now I'm angry. Stampede.
An enemy has been slain. Enemy is legendary.
You must follow.
Shut down.
I know the way. Nothing can hold me back.
An enemy has been slain. Enemy killing spree.
Stand.
Your turret has been destroyed. An ally has been slain.
I know the way.
Enemy rampage. Shut down.
I know the way. Nothing can hold me back.
An enemy has been slain. You have been slain. An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
You must follow. Nothing can hold me back.
Shut down. An ally has been slain.
I know the way.
An ally has been slain.
I know the way. Stampede. Nothing can hold me back. You must follow. Must follow. Nothing can hold me back.
Has been slain. Your turret has been destroyed. An enemy has been slain. Killing spree. Your turret has been destroyed.
Now I'm angry. I know the way. Stampede.
An enemy has been slain.
Stampede. I know the way.
Your turret has been destroyed. Rampage. An ally has been slain. Enemy killing spree.
You must follow. Now I'm angry.
Shut down.
Nothing can hold me back. I know the way.
Ally has been slain.